Guest, yep.
Let's get this thing started. No.
I could at first, but now I don't hear anything anymore.
Is it up to you? All right,
I'm hearing people now.
Me as well.
Likewise.
Sorry, Andrew, did you say that you guys can't hear us?
We can now. You
Okay.
were-
I think that's
you just
because
came back in
everybody's
again.
mics were off. So I just turned my mic on. Helen, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, it's a bit of a noisy room right now because we're just trying to get settled here. So I'm going to turn my mic off. Chris, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Apparently I have to turn this on. So roll call has already been completed, and I would like to welcome you all here and provide with this land acknowledgement. Today marks the start of another year of work for our board of directors. I want to begin with a few words about that work. I want to respectfully acknowledge that the Board of Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority meets on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people. The Crown is charged with the conservation of the Mississippi Carp and Ottawa watershed under the Williamson Treaty and Rideau Purchase. Several First Nations have played an important role in the history of these watersheds. We offer our gratitude to the First People for their care for and teaching about our earth and our relationships. As we move forward together along the path of reconciliation, may we relearn and once again honor those teachings and bring them into the work that we do here. As we meet today, and I reflect upon in the meaning of the word reconciliation, I observe the following. There are voices that are missing from our table. The lands of cultural significance are not included among the lands we are charged to protect and conserve by the Crown. The vital and traditional species have and continue to be put at risk by habitat loss and pollution. That the Crown has instructed that we be silent on these matters, and that the waterways named to recognize the first people who lived on them at the time of settlement still do not bear their true names. As the descendants of people who settled and prospered on the lands of many First Nations, I, like so many others, was raised without knowing the history of the land and the people who had cared for it since the beginning. My own path towards learning that history and the truth of my people's relationship with that land and the people we displaced remains long. But I am committed to making that journey, and I know that I will not be alone. Thank you all. And as that forward, I would like to introduce Roberta and Ross, who will, from Algonquin First Nations, who will be providing us with an opening.
Before I officially start speaking, I'll unofficially ask, are there people in the room that would like to get smudged, or would you prefer just the smudging of the room? Okay, maybe I should say what the process of being smudged is basically like. So Ross would waft the smoke in your direction, and you would do something like, this is what I do. Calling in our ancestors, greeting grandfather sun, grandmother moon, father sky, calling in our spirit guides when the smoke is above us, and then bringing the smoke to one's eyes, asking that we see clearly with love, with respect, or whatever comes to your mind. Bringing the smoke to our ears, reminding ourselves we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So hopefully on occasion, at least we would listen twice as often as we speak. I'm working on that one. And that we open our ears so that we hear the things we need to hear, not necessarily the things we want to hear. And then bringing the smoke to our mouths, reminding ourselves that they had that sticks and stones things totally backwards, that we recover from being hit with a stick, but not so easily recover from harsh words, so that we are more mindful of what comes out of our mouths. And then bringing the smoke to our throats. Sometimes things get stuck there. Often when we're in groups, we think to ourselves, well, I don't want to say that, I'll look like an idiot. Or, you know, they all know that, I'm not going to say it. But if it's kind of moving up a bit, often taking the courage to just speak it out with kindness and respect, of course. And then I get carried away and like to bring the smoke to my shoulders. We often carry a lot of burdens, especially ones that aren't even ours. And then listening to the land acknowledgement, sometimes we try to carry the burdens of our ancestors. Well, we're not our ancestors. The mistakes that we've all made, we can do better. That's why we're here together. And then bringing the smoke to our hearts. And this one, it took me a while to realize that when I was asking to have the ice in my heart melted, I was actually wanting to turn ice into water, not realizing that the body's way of doing that is tears, which are very healing and wonderful, but being careful what the intention is and what we're asking for. And also when bringing the smoke to the heart, I often ask to have pebbles removed. Sometimes things get stuck there, like resentments and whatnot, so to have them gently removed. And then bringing the smoke further down our body, I like to stop at my hips because I was taught that this is where we carry joy. So those of us that are walking around like this, we might want to try to put more joy in our lives. And then bringing the smoke down to our knees. I do one of 2 really stupid puns, but I love words. I ask that I remember that my needs are to be met by me. I'm not to use everybody around me to meet my own needs. So knees and needs, that's a pretty sick pun, but anyway. And then bringing the smoke further down our legs, which carry us into our future. I ask that we are treading on Mother Earth with care and respect. And then my second and final sick pun is bringing the smoke underneath our feet. So connecting our souls, S-O-U-L-S, as well as S-O-L-E-S. I'm really pathetic. Connecting to Mother Earth and asking for her nurturance and her creativity. And then when we turn around, for those of us that will, Ross will smudge our back and get rid of all the scunge that we carry and those little darts of whatever people throw at us. So that's basically my version of a smudge. And I say the rest in my mind. He likes to talk. Mhm, mhm. Intention means everything, though, and then we can do all kinds of things in our imagination and they work just as well. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I just can't. Yeah, yeah. We'll be by you momentarily. You're almost cooked. And with all things Indigenous, you always have the right to pass. No matter what some people may tell you. There's no have-tos. So I'm one of the rebellious ones. Mm. Mm. Since we often get caught up in busyness and we want to move faster than the speed of light, this is a really great exercise in patience and then taking the time to sit and collect our thoughts. So excuse me, Kwekwe Ani Yakakwe Nadijnakas, Mahingani Dodam, Banashir Algonquin Ni Danjaba, and Lake Clearandayon. So for those who don't speak Algonquin, I love saying that. I just said one of my spirit names is Red Tail Hawk Woman. I'm Wolf Clan. I'm Banashir Algonquin, and I have the honor and pleasure of living at Lake Clear. So that means I belong to the Opiongo Mountains and the Bonashare Rivershed. So on behalf of those Bonashare Algonquin ancestors, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone here on unceded traditional Algonquin land. And I love your land acknowledgement, and I love that you put water in the story. Well, of course, right? But often organizations forget about that, and the waterways were our first roads. So I don't need to tell you how important the water is. And so if you saw my surname, you would know I have settler ancestors. So on their behalf, I say Chi-miigwech because they were taught to, and that means thank you very much. So Chi-miigwech to the keepers of the land, the air and the water that made it possible for us to meet together. And let's thank all our ancestors because without them, we wouldn't even be here today. So instead of standing up here and talking for hours, I know you want to get on with your meeting. I'll just sing a song and then I'll sit down and be quiet. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way. Ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, oh, hey, ya, hey, oh. Way, hey, ya, ho, way. Ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, oh, hey, ya, hey, oh. Way, hey, ya, ho, way. Ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, oh, hey, ya, hey, oh. Way, hey, ya, ho, way. Ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya. Way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, hey, ya, ho, ho, way, oh, hey, ya, hey, oh. That's just a vocable, so they aren't actually words.
So Ross and Roberta, we really want to thank you for coming today and sharing with us. And it was quite spiritual, the smudging. I've never had that done before or even seen it for that matter. So very, very appreciative of that. Thank you so much. Okay. So the first point is the declaration of interest. They were to come in writing, but if any time during the meeting you find that there is a pecuniary interest to you, please let me know and we will address it. So the agenda has been provided to you, and the resolution for the agenda is that the agenda for April 8th, 2024 Board of Director meeting be adopted as presented. Could I have someone please move that? Okay, moved by Mary Lou and seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we also received the approved minutes. And that, okay, finance. Okay, so the finance. So the motion for that is resolved that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on March 11th, 2023 be received and approved as printed. I also need that moved. Okay, Taylor and Glenn, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next, item number 3, which is on page 22 or on your agenda, is the financial statement. And Stacy, you're going to lead us through that.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? I'm trying to how to move this off to the side. It was 2023 was overall a good year. We had new auditors this past year. from KPMG replacing Cross Street. And part of that new process was that we actually prepared the statements 90% ourselves, and that I'm presenting this year, and past Glenn has presented them. I'll be going through a few of the highlights, the statement of financial position, the statement of operations, and some of the notes to the financial statements. Yep. So it's trying to make it so the screen is more better to see, but on the statement of financial position, there's the three key areas: the financial assets, which is our cash, our GICs, and our receivables. Overall, that's down about 322,000 over last year. Our financial liabilities, which is our payables, our deferred revenue, but primarily our long-term debt, that's down about 250,000 over last year. Our non-financial assets, which is our prepaid expenses, which primarily are a portion of our insurance policy because of the timing of when our policy is, and our capital assets. That's up about 418,000 over last year, leaving us with an accumulated surplus of just over 7 million at the end of 2023, which is 347,000 up from last year, which is our surplus for the year. A couple of key elements from the notes there. Note 2. We've increased our investments in GICs by 1.6 million to take better advantage of interest rates having gone up. On note 8, we've got an increase in our capital assets, which is primarily the work we did at the Carleton Place Dam, which is 305,000, and the start of the Cash-Wackamack project, which is initially the Class EA, which was 139,000. Note 13 is our new asset retirement obligation. 61,000 was set up as estimated costs for potential cleanup of the buildings at the Mill of Kintail site related potentially to asbestos and lead paint. On the statement of operations, new for this year, we split out the capital pieces from the operating. So we have an operating surplus of just over 189,000 with 4.7 in revenues and a capital surplus of 158,000, which comes from 634,000 capital revenues, which is the capital levy, and 476,000 in capital expenses, leaving us with an annual surplus for the year of 347,853. The status of the reserves. From note 10, the accumulated surplus, we have our unrestricted reserves, which is our operating reserves. And this year we added the two new category 2 and 3 operating reserves. And we have our restricted reserves, which again, we added the new category 3 capital this year. And new for this year from some of the notes. Note 12 is a new breakdown of our expenses by type or object. That was a requirement of the new auditor. So breaking down by salaries, professional fees, etc., and comparative numbers to last year. Wages and benefits, including training, is about 63% of our expenses. Note 18 is another new note, and it explains the pension benefits related to OMERS and a regular update on the status of that plan. MVCA contributed 191,000 last year. Half of that is from employee contributions, so it's 50/50. And note 19 outlines the new accounting standards that were adopted in this fiscal year. Other than the ARO, they didn't have any impact on MVCA. They related mainly to foreign currency and investments, which we don't have. So were there any questions?
Yeah, don't see any questions. Thank you, Stacy, for information. Next, we have we have a motion for this, and I thought it'd be after KPMG. Sorry. So be it resolved that the Board of Directors receive and approve the 2023 audited financial statement and direct that they be posted and distributed in accordance with Section 38 of the Conservation Authority Act. Do I have someone to move that? Janet and Dina for second. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next, we have the auditor's report, and that's Chris Clark at KPMG, and I think he's on the line, right? Yeah.
I'm on the line here.
Thank you.
So I just shared my screen with our audit findings presentation. Can everyone see that up on your screen there? Alrighty, so I'll try to make this relatively brief, as I know we went through it kind of in detail with the committee. So it's great. The financial statements are approved. I do want to send my thanks to Stacy and Sally and the team for their hard work this year. Certainly switching auditors from a firm that you've been with for a number of years, as well as preparing your statements in-house so that we can do a straight financial audit. I know isn't easy, and we look forward to moving on to future years where hopefully things can be a little bit more streamlined and smooth for you guys. So thank you for your help for that before I start. So moving on into our report here, overall, we're issuing a clean audit opinion, no uncorrected misstatements, which is typically what the boards like to hear. We completed our audit using a materiality of 100,000. For reference, I believe Cross Street used roughly a $95,000 materiality, so not much difference there. As I said, there's no uncorrected adjustments in the statements. So from a board and committee perspective, that materiality doesn't have too much impact. We did kind of focus with Stacy to correct any adjustments we really did see this year, and kind of set the precedent moving on into future years. So things went well in regards to that. So on this page here, just audit highlights kind of gives you a synopsis of what I'll quickly run through today in the report. The first piece is a bit of a status update. Obviously, the committee approved the statements. The board just approved the statements. We have everything completed. You'll notice here, the top point was receipt of representation letter from the actuary that was received prior to this board date. So that actually isn't an outstanding item. It was just outstanding when we prepared the report for the committee. Other than that, essentially just this presentation and getting our signed representation letter back from management, which we will after the board meeting today. So essentially everything's complete and there's no significant issues to note, but I will walk through sort of our process and any findings we did have. The first stage in KPMG's audit methodology is our risk assessment, where essentially we look at the key areas of the financial statements and the audit work we're going to do. And we basically base this work off of the risks surrounding that element of the financial statements. Now, one element that is essentially consistent across all of our audit clients or all of our client base is this risk of fraud as it pertains to management override controls. Now, I'll touch on this in a later slide, but that isn't specific to Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority itself. It is just the inherent risk that management and the treasurer are in a unique position to alter financial reporting, as they are the ones in control of the numbers and the procedures in place to establish those numbers. Other than that, our areas of focus are risk-based, and they primarily were focused on revenues and deferred revenues with receivables, payroll, tangible capital assets, which includes the newly implemented asset retirement obligation, cash and investments, as well as financial reporting in the statements themselves. In terms of significant risks, as I mentioned, the main item before is management override of controls, and now our response to this is a few procedures. Now, the first is we essentially analyze the entire population of the general ledger and make sure that it rolls forward to the current year trial balance that was given by management. Along with that, we test journal entries and such that we believe are high risk based on certain criteria. Of these procedures, we didn't identify any issues or indicators of management bias or changes made that weren't appropriate from management. This is a busy slide, obviously, and I'll touch on it quickly, but this was the main talking point of the audit. Although financially, asset retirement obligations only had a roughly $61,000 impact on the balance sheet and a $14,000 impact on the surplus. It was a newly implemented standard. Fortunately, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority wasn't affected by it as much as other conservation authorities that we saw. Primarily, the adjustment pertained to buildings and structures at the Mill of Quintal, I believe, whereby we just needed to see a provision recorded for the potential cleanup of asbestos in those buildings upon their retirement. In short, our procedures really, Stacy and the management team needed to do a deep dive into their asset listings and basically scope out assets that weren't applicable to the standard, and then come up with an estimate as to what the estimated cleanup costs are for this potential lead-based paint and asbestos present. We reviewed Stacy's and the internal management team's adjustments and have deemed them appropriate based on what we've seen in other clients, as well as the ministry stated rate chart for cleanup costs. So that, as Stacy mentioned, has been disclosed in the capital assets note, as well as the note 19 to the financial statements for the implementation of new accounting standards. Moving forward, we'll obviously have to reevaluate this estimate each year for new information that does come to light or remediation that's done as part of renovations, etc. But given that the Conservation Authority chose the prospective adoption of this standard, it really is a go forward adjustment and to amortize it each year. Many other conservation authorities chose a retrospective adjustment, which you'd see one large hit to the surplus in this year and then nothing else moving forward. So a bit unique for MVCA, but again, within the standard, and we believe it's been appropriately reflected in the statements. New financial instruments standards came into play this year. However, no impact on the Conservation Authority, so I won't spend any time on this. In terms of corrected misstatements, now at the back of the audit findings report, you'll find an appendix for our management representation letter. Included in that letter are the adjustments, the formal adjustments we made with management to the books and records during the audit. Now, there was really only three. The first was for ARO. Now, although we didn't develop the estimated numbers ourselves, this was something that we identified and had the management team record in the statements. The second was just an adjustment for the change in the retirement benefit obligation, which sits on the balance sheet related to the OMERS pension plan. And the last is to record an accrual for a liability for banked time, which essentially employees were owned, but it was being tracked off book, but not recorded on the financial statements. Overall, only a $19,000 impact on the surplus this year. So certainly from a board and member perspective, these are not overly large or material adjustments made. So management did a great job there. In terms of control deficiencies, now this was a substantive audit. We take a substantive audit approach, meaning we test the numbers and look at the numbers as opposed to controls over financial reporting. However, as part of our audit, we do look at the controls and safeguards in place that management has. And although we haven't identified any significant deficiencies or anything that would inhibit us from issuing a clean audit opinion, we do like to bring forward some management letter points to move forward and try to tighten up these controls over financial reporting. In terms of these, I'll just touch on them quickly. The first is evidence of review. Now, from our understanding and discussions with management, there are several review controls in place over review of bank reconciliations and journal entries posted. However, on some of the samples we selected, we didn't see evidence of it. Doesn't mean it's not happening, but we have, left a note with management to do their best, especially this day in the digital world, to have, digital sign-offs and date stamps on things so that we can see evidence of review and approval on a timely basis. The next, I already touched upon it as we did do a corrected adjustment for it, was just tracking and lieu time accruals. There was one instance where one of the items we selected, their vacation accrual didn't necessarily agree from the GL to the payroll software. So we just recommend that, a more periodic as opposed to just year-end review is completed on these accruals so that the books match the payroll software records and that all liabilities and expenses are captured within the figures that you are reviewing on a monthly basis. Tangible capital assets, no real issues here. However, this isn't uncommon across a lot of our clients and public sector clients, is that once assets are fully amortized, we recommend that they are written off the TCA register in full, meaning the costs and accumulated amortization is wiped off just to keep things clean. Now that doesn't have a net impact on the financial statements on that number you see on the balance sheet or statement of financial position. Additionally, we did notice that there was a handful of items being capitalized that were below the stated TCA policy thresholds. That's not a big deal because we, deem them capital in nature, so they are appropriate. It just helps streamline things from a recording of financial transactions if you do try to keep to these thresholds as best you can. And lastly, just in terms of developer deposit tracking, so in conjunction with my discussions with Stacy, this is something that is on the radar for 2024, just having a more streamlined approach to receipts and disbursements of developer deposits on hand and when to follow up if they should be released or written off into income or expense. Not that the number recorded on the financial statements isn't correct. It's just a more robust tracking procedure in place is what we would recommend moving forward. Accounting policies and practices, I already touched upon these. These are just the newly implemented standards this year. Other financial reporting matters. As Stacy mentioned, management did prepare the financial statements this year. I would say to the 90% threshold will be a reasonable percentage to apply, but we did go back and forth just on some guidance to support the new financial reporting framework and some note disclosures that we see across our other conservation authority clients. Again, that's sort of a nice thing about working with KPMG is our office may not handle a ton of conservation authorities, but our firm does as a whole. So we often draw on resources and learnings from other clients of similar nature. And we certainly did that this year and helped with, Stacy in informing these financial statements. And I believe we have a good template for moving forward. Specific topics. The only other matter to note here was just, we had a discussion about making sure in terms of related parties, and the only related party technically for the Conservation Authority was the foundation. We just recommend that receivables and pledges from the foundation be cleaned up on a timely basis and actually have those receipts in place so that the cash is actually transferred. We don't want to see longer term receivables outstanding, especially for a related party. And lastly, independence. Obviously, this is our first year auditing the Conservation Authority, and as part of our KYC and onboarding of a new client, we go through a pretty robust independence process. Now moving forward into our second and third years and thereafter, each year we do analyze our independence from both a firm and our engagement team, myself, Lori, and Tatiana, just to ensure that we are separate and don't have any independence issues that would cloud our judgment in completing the audit of these financial statements. That's it for the body of the paragraph. Again, the only real items, most of these just have links and some useful information from a board of directors standpoint, and as well as for the committee when we present it to them, just about some audit quality and changes to auditing standards upcoming. So feel free to look at those. They are live links in the document. The only piece I wanted to draw attention to, which was on the front of the financial statements that were provided with the package, just our audit report. It was a clean audit report, pretty standard, no nothing specific to note other than this other matter for comparative information here. Since we didn't audit the December 31st, 2022 balances, they were done by Cross Street. We just had that is a mandatory thing for us to include. Moving forward into future years, this will be taken out and it'll just be a standard form, hopefully clean audit opinion moving forward. But that was really the only thing I wanted to draw to your attention from the appendices. So I'll open the floor to any questions that anyone may have. And again, thank you for having me at this meeting. And yeah, thanks very much.
Do we have any questions? Okay. Oh, Glenn.
Just a quick one for staff, I guess. The recommendations that the auditor made, have staff accepted those and are there plans in place to incorporate the recommendations?
Yes.
Yeah, so so we discussed them with management and they are in agreement. For the record, for future audits, when we identify these management letter points, we call them, part of our annual procedures are following up on them and getting a formal update, which this time next year, when we present our findings to board, if there aren't new items, we will at a minimum touch base and give you guys an update on these findings from this year, to give you an update on how they progress moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Stephen.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we change our change the system and make it easier for our auditor to do his job. I'm sure will be reflected in next year's bill. Am I correct?
Yes, so this year the bill is, especially with the implementation of the new standards, there was a little bit of a billing on top of the original quoted amount, but certainly moving forward, the billing will be in line with our proposal that was accepted.
Okay, I do have one comment. So, Chris, you go through this in detail with our finance committee.
Yep.
I think for next year, when you come in front of the board, your slides were not helpful at all. You need to
Okay.
really condense your slides and have a slide that can document very clearly what you want to talk about, because
Sure.
it was way too busy and basically just looking around, you lost most of us because there was really nothing to follow on the thing. Okay. You're very
Sure.
knowledgeable about your product, but you need to slow down and you need to have slides that are appropriate for the level that you're talking to. Okay.
Yeah, I
And
will.
with that, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. I will say, this audit findings report typically is more for, I guess, the use of reviewing in advance for the board and the committee in detail. I would agree that the slides definitely are too busy for a formal presentation. Most senior managers or partners at the firm, when they present these in front of our boards, they typically honestly just leave the screen on the highlights slide and then just talk to it as opposed to kind of scroll through the actual report. You guys being a first year board presentation, I did want to at least kind of show the extent of the report and walk through it, but certainly I will keep that in mind and make sure that future presentations are adjusted accordingly. So thank you for the feedback.
Well, it's just that we do bring it to our finance committee and they go through it in detail and we do have a copy of it beforehand. So if you had slides that just hit at the highlights, I think you could really improve on that. Okay. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Employee presentation, compliance implementation, Rachel. Needs to be said.
Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Cluche. I am MVCA's regulations technician. So the main aspect of my job consists of handling the compliance program, writing permits, accepting concerns, and assisting with enforcement. So conservation authorities are required to administer, sorry, slides here. There we go. So conservation authorities are required to administer a permit system for regulated areas within our jurisdiction. MVCA's goal is to ensure compliance with Ontario Regulation 4124 under the Conservation Authorities Act in the terms and conditions of permits issued by the authority. So as you probably recall, our board of directors approved MVCA's compliance strategy in early spring 2023. So this presentation is kind of just going to talk about the compliance process and give an update since that document was approved. So the general compliance process, so we received notification that a permitted project has been completed. After that, we review the permit and the associated conditions that were issued along with it. We determine the priority of the permit, so that I'm going to give a little bit more information on our prioritization process in my next slide. So we review any submitted information along with the permit, any surveys, any photo submissions. I'll get into those a little bit more in the next slides as well. And we often conduct an on-site inspection if it's required for compliance. And then we follow up with a written summary of MVCA's review and advise if the project has been deemed compliant and if the file can be closed, or if we require any additional information. If there are any outstanding conditions, we have discussions with the property owner and or the contractor, and then there's a secondary review after that, and the process kind of restarts. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the compliance process from April 2023 to March 2024. So prior to issuing a permit, the permit writer at MVCA, often the planner or the planning technician, will include specific conditions applicable to that project. This is all outlined in the regulation as to what we can issue or what we can condition on permits. So once that permit is issued, it's logged into our internal system. It's our IMS system. And then the permit writer is going to flag if conditions associated with that permit require compliance. So typically, this is if we request any confirmations of elevations after a project has been completed, or if an on-site inspection is going to be required no matter what. So generally, files that are medium high risk will require an inspection and or the confirmation of the elevations following the work being completed. The blue table I have on the right-hand side is a more condensed version of Table 2, and that was issued in the compliance strategy last year. That is our order of priority. So I just kind of took the priority and then if an inspection is required, but there is a lot more information on that Table 2 of the compliance strategy. So regularly, we do run compliance tracking reports that lists permits that have been flagged for compliance reviews. So we apply this order of priority list, categorize the permit files, and then begin that compliance process that I mentioned on my previous slide. So for some statistics, so I started as the regulations technician full-time in July 2023. Due to some staff turnover, I was assisting Matt Craig, our manager, with enforcement files. And we had over 40 open violations at that time, so mainly prioritized our concerns that we were receiving from the public and member municipalities and the violation files. So in 2023, MVCA issued approximately 205 permits. 76 of these permits required compliance review as per our tracking in our software. And 11 of these requested confirmations of elevations prior to the permit expiry. In 2023-2024, MVCA has completed approximately 40 permit inspections. Generally, permits are issued for a 24-month period, and then compliance is ongoing for permits that are still open. So just Sorry about that. So this is just some visuals. So this is a photo of some non-compliance. And it's non-compliant because I showed up for a final inspection where I was told all the work had been completed. And then as you can see, there's a stockpile of fill. The vast majority of this property is regulated as floodplain. So when I showed up, I wasn't expecting to see any kind of sediment on site. And then on top of that, there's no sediment control around that or perimeter control left. So this was I had a discussion with the contractor and he had the fill pile removed within a day or two. So this is an instance of compliance. So we were again notified that work had been completed for the replacement of a bridge. So we showed up and then we looked at the overall condition and we had our permit copy with us and we were reviewing the conditions. There we go. So we showed up and there was no construction material left. Everything looked clean. In the bottom right corner, you can look at the erosion control that was installed. And this was installed according to the Schedule A plans. So we didn't have any issues with this and we ordered a compliance status and the permit file was closed. Just admit Marika. Okay, so some changes to compliance since we approved the compliance strategy. So as I mentioned, that was approved in spring 2023. So due to available resources, MBCA prioritizes spot checks photo submission review for permit compliance of our last two categories on our prioritization table. Excuse me. So photo submission review is generally used for routine and minor shoreline alterations. So that includes like some retaining walls, erosion and sediment controls, other projects such as like culvert replacements that are under a meter. So we have very specific kind of thresholds on that. Inspections are still conducted when we received any kind of concern or complaint, or if one of the permit writers feels that a compliance inspection is warranted, we'll go out right away. A new thing that we are doing is, as I believe it was beginning of 2024, we are putting in a notification condition into all of our permits. So any permit that's issued, we're asking that either the property owner or the contractor notify us that the project is completed. And then we will either do the photo submission review if anything is required, or we'll just kind of update our files if it's a more routine project. And then there's also provincial regulation changes. So the Ontario Regulation 4124, I'm sure everyone's heard a lot about it. I won't go into it too much. I know there was a presentation that was given to the Board of Directors, I believe in March 2024, describing the changes to enforcement. A lot of the changes are going to be more along the lines to the enforcement side and not necessarily the compliance. There is enforcement involved in compliance, but that's usually comes in once you kind of deem a project non-compliant already. So yeah, just to kind of summarize, the new regulations will not significantly alter the compliance process, mainly just the enforcement and the investigation process. And then MBCA has very recently updated our regulations policies. So we're going to be utilizing that. And just to finish off some 2024 challenges that we've had so far. So we've had projects not be constructed as per the approved Schedule A plans. Some projects have been altered after a compliance inspection has been conducted. So we've done our final sign off and then they changed, like there have been changes after that. Compliance on retroactive permits and active enforcement files can be difficult sometimes. And then chasing down the status of a project prior to a permit expiring, but we are working on that one by including that notification into our permits. I've included my information and then the regulations officer as well, Will. So if there's any questions, you can take those now.
Any questions, Rachel? Okay, Rachel, I have one. You have notification of when they complete a project. So what's the follow, like, is that the projects, do they have timeframes that they have to be done by? And then if you don't see your thing, that triggers you to follow up?
Kind of. So what gets triggered is our permits are issued for 24 months. So we have all of that tracked. And then I mentioned we pull routine and reports of open permits. And then so the ones we prioritize them and then we will sort them by which one's going to expire the fastest or the most like upcoming date. So we prioritize ones that will expire and then try and reach out before permit is expired to get the information that we need to close the file.
Okay, is it a violation of the permit if they don't turn the notice in?
Yes. We do try and work with a lot of people and we understand that projects can halt at times, they can extend, and then we do offer reissuance of permits. People can reapply. And a lot of this kind of goes hand in hand. And that's where I was also kind of just mentioning that enforcement comes in after. And I do find it's all part of the same kind of system, but they are slightly separate where the compliance process starts and finishes. And something is deemed non-compliant, enforcement will come in and then an investigation will start versus a compliance inspection, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. Okay, our next presentation is going to be on the Watershed Outlook report. Last time it was a little bit, I would say a little bit dire. You were looking at not enough water. And so let's see where you're at now.
All right. So, with the rain/snow event we had last week, levels and flows are finally picking up after a few weeks of no rain and cooler temperatures. So this is really benefiting us. Last month we were seeing above average flows, and now we're flipping it, and the river is now seeing below average flows for this time of year. Of course, as we would normally be seeing the start of the freshet right now. So it's still, these lower than normal flows are not a concern. We have already seen some relief as flows are starting to increase from last week's precipitation. And we are expecting more of an increase with this week's weather forecasts. The process of filling the upper lakes to achieve summer target levels this year has been a slow, tedious one. Dams on the upper lakes are mostly sitting with all logs in right now and are still between 10 to 25 centimeters below their summer targets, depending on the lake, but are slowly coming up day to day. So we are getting there. It's been slow. Crotch Lake is still close to a meter below its summer target. But if the current rainfall over the next 2 weeks materializes, then we should be in a very good shot of reaching all of the targets. And if it doesn't, we still have some time to get there. So we're still in a good spot. We are getting there slowly and steady. And we might be seeing a little bit more water in the system if the rainfall does pan out with the forecast. Just to give you a little bit of I don't know if how well you guys can see this graph, but this is the spring peaks at Appleton from 1970 to this year. So you can see in the upper portion of the dots, those are our extreme flood events. So that's 1998, 2019. The ones over on the far side, those are our peaks that we had in May. So that's 2017 when we had those large rain events in May that caused extreme events. And you can see this red dot here. That's this year. So it is the earliest peak we have seen on our records from, we've been keeping them since 1970. So we peaked at Appleton on March 12th. The earliest we had on record before that was the 21st of March. So definitely a unique year. And it wasn't the lowest peak, but it was definitely half of what we would normally see in a normal year. And all of our tributaries basically peaked half of what a month earlier and half of what they would normally peak at. So another unique year in our books. The long range forecast is indicating a wet April, and the current forecast seems to agree with that. We do have a lot of rain in the next 2 weeks. So we could, if all this rain pans out, we could see another peak happen, another small peak. Nothing too extreme. We're not expecting any kind of flood event as of right now. All of our system is still quite low. We have lots of storage capacity still to be able to handle any kind of significant rain. And it's not a lot of rain in the forecast. It's just a lot of steady day-to-day rain. So that's a little bit easier to take into the watershed than it would be to have an extreme, over 100 mils of rain at once. As for the Ottawa River, flows and levels are near the bottom of the normal range for this time of year in most locations along the main stem of the Ottawa River. Flows and levels are expected to slightly rise over the next coming weeks. There's still snow coming off the upper basin portion of the watershed. They are indicating no flooding at this time. The next update from the Secretariat is scheduled for tomorrow. So we will see how they predict the forecasted rain. There are some significant amounts happening up in North Bay area in the next couple days. So we'll see what they predict for the impact of the Ottawa River watershed. But we will be continually actively monitoring conditions and issuing messages when needed. Any questions?
Any questions for Jennifer?
Perfect.
Oh, there's one online, did you say? Okay, Bev?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I'm interested in the hydro generating stations that are downstream. Are you in contact with them at all about what's going on?
I do contact them to let them know what kind of water we're sending their way, but they're all run of the river, so they don't have any impact on the actual water levels and flows in the river. So I don't know exactly what they would be telling me. I usually tell them what's coming to them, and they would deal with the water that comes through.
Yeah, that's really what I was asking. Do you let them know, what you're doing with the levels so they can make their own preparations? Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sounds a little bit more encouraging than the last time we talked. Okay, we have the GM update report. Sally.
Okay, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of things for you. The first was, I want to draw to your attention, number 2. You'll recall at our last meeting, the question was posed about, with the changes to our regulation, 4124, whether or not the exemption that was referenced for municipal drains, whether that would apply in regulated wetlands. And so we just wanted to clarify with everybody that we did receive feedback from Conservation Ontario that indeed, yes, regulated wetlands are still subject to permitting for municipal drain maintenance projects. So we'll be following up with your public works departments and the like to make sure that they're clear on that. But that was the direction we received. I also wanted to make you aware that there are a couple of documents that we've been working on behind the scenes. One is an update to the strategic plan for the Milliken Tail Museum. We've just embarked on that, and we're very lucky. There's a lady who's been working with us, Fayuza, who just happened to knock on our door about the same time that Scott and I were talking about embarking on this project. And she was looking for a project to work on because she's doing some coursework, and she's an experienced civil servant, retired, who said, yeah, I'd love to help you with that museum project. So, really great timing on that. So she's got the ball rolling for us. But Bev, she's going to be coming to the museum committee folks and engaging with you guys shortly. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that that's something coming down the pipe. As well, another requirement for obtaining our annual funding is a disaster recovery plan, mitigation recovery plan. And so we have one in place, and Stephanie and Scott are updating and that will be submitted with our annual application to the province for our grant. So those were a couple of key ones. Next, our summer camp got off to a great start in terms of enrollment. We did a pre-launch to people who had previously participated in the camp, and we'd been maintaining a list of people who had expressed interest over the past couple of years. And based upon that and a bit of advertising, we were 2/3 enrolled within a matter of not even 2 weeks, I think. And so now we're doing a more promotion in the community and in print media. And so we're very confident that we'll be able to meet our enrollment target for the summer. So kudos to everybody working on that. Next, I wanted to highlight for everybody, the members who are in the CARP watershed should have received correspondence from our office that we've arranged for briefings of the ward councillors on the 19th and 22nd of April to review with you the draft floodplain mapping that will be coming to the board next month. And it's going to be going out to the public at an open house on May 2nd. So we're doing pre-briefings of your offices in just a couple of weeks. So looking forward to bringing the finalized floodplain mapping back to this table in May. And then lastly, just wanted to let you know that we recently filled a couple of vacancies. Chris Stoddard is our new geotechnical civil engineer. He just started last Monday or Tuesday, I guess it was. And Shabab Izam is our new engineer in training. He started today. And so these are really important because we have 2 people on pat leave right now, and we're going to have another pat and mat leave coming up soon. And it's a busy season for us. So really important that we got these folks in the door. So, so that's my GM update. There's other matters there if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Sally. Any questions? Janet?
Yes, just the CARP floodplain mapping. So it will be on the 2nd of May. Do you have the venue set yet? And where will it be? And Kelly,
we do. I'm going to pass that to Kelly or.
I'm just waiting on an okay from the team to be able to send out our sort of promotional, informational things for you to share. So once I have the go-ahead, yourself and the 4 other counselors will be receiving a lovely sort of piece of media that you can share with all the information to the people that you think that would be exactly what I want. Absolutely.
Okay, so for those who didn't hear, it's at the Beaverbrook Community Center, and we'll be sharing details with the local members as soon as everything's ready.
Okay. Okay, our next section is actually the election of officers, and I do have a motion for that. And the board resolves that Sally McIntyre be appointed as chair for the administering the election of board of directors chair for 2024. Could I have someone move that, please? Moved by Mary Lou, seconded by Dina. All in favor? Carried. Sally, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So the election will be carried out in accordance with our procedures set out in our administrative bylaw. The elections will be conducted in the order of election of chair, followed by the election of the vice chair. So at this time, I would ask if there are any nominations for the position of chair. Yes.
I'd like to nominate Paul Kehoe.
Okay. Are, oh. I'll write it down anyway, but thank you. Are there any other nominations from the floor for the position of chair? Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Okay, I need to have a resolution that the nominations for the position of chair be closed. Can I have a mover? Roy, and did I see, Allison. Terrific. All those in favor? Carried. So I declare Paul Kehoe, oh wait, I have to officially ask you. Paul, do you accept this position? Okay, thank you. So I declare Paul by acclamation to be the chair, and I turn the gavel over to you, sir.
So our next position is the nomination and provision of vice chair. So I need the resolutions for that. Do I have someone to move that? Moved by Mary Lou. Okay, and I don't need to second that one either, apparently? No? Okay.
Yeah. Need to take
Oh.
nominations from the-
Yeah, I take nominations from the floor. I'm just all confused now. So Janet,
I nominate Jeff Atkinson of Carlton Place.
okay. So Jeff has been moved. Now you're going to tell me what to do. I have to ask 3 times. Is there any other nominations? That's number 2. Any other nominations? That's 3. What was that? All right. So the resolve for the position of vice chair be closed. And Mary Lou, you were closing that? Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure. Okay. And we'll ask Jeff, are you willing to accept the position of vice chair?
Yes, but thanks to my nominator.
Thank you. Okay. So we need to move this, do we?
No, you can.
He's playing. Hey, you're good to go. All right. So we now have the 2024 Regulations Committee and other appointments report from Sally.
So all of you should have received an email from me just asking whether you wanted changes at all in which committee you sat on, and that included people who are sitting on the Regulations Committee. The Regulations Committee has to come here for membership approval because you are being delegated authority under our bylaws, under the Act, to make determinations on behalf of the board for any permit applications that are appealed. So I heard back from some, but not all, but I was taking silence as agreement in this instance that most of you are quite happy with the appointments that you had last year. And so the list you have before you for all the committees reflects status quo from last year to this year. Kelly also reached out to the folks who were appointed to the to advisory committees and to the foundation, and they also confirmed that they're happy to act as the board liaisons and appointments to those committees. So the motions that we're looking for is just a reapproval of these appointments for the 2024 term.
So I read this resolution. Okay, be resolved that the Board of the Directors appoint the board members listed in Table 1 as amended to the Regulation Committee to hear applications pursuant to Ontario Regulation 41/24 and MVCA's administrative bylaw. And B, direct members of the Regulation Committee to deliberate on the evidence presented at a hearing and grant or deny such permission on behalf of the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority and provide the applicant with reasons in writing therefor. 2, that the Board of Directors appoint Janet Mason as board representative on the Mississippi Valley Conservation Foundation. 3, that the Board of Directors appoint Bev Holmes as Board Representative on the Mill of Kintail Museum Advisory Committee. And 4, that the Board of Directors appoint Dina Comley as Board Representative on the Mississippi River Watershed Plan Implementation Public Advisory Committee. Could I have someone move that, please? Allison, and seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried. Congratulations, folks. I think the next one is just the Conservation of Ontario appointments, and I'm just going to read the motion. I think we've all been through this. So resolve that the Board of Directors appoint the following to Conservation Ontario Council for 2024. The 2024 Board Chair as voting delegate, the 2024 Board Vice Chair as first alternate, and the General Manager as second alternate. Do I have someone to move that, please? Moved by Allison, seconded by, oh, it's Kathy, right? Cindy. Yeah. You told me you were going to today too, weren't you? Okay, all in favor? That is carried. And the next one's the appointment of the 2024 auditor. So Sally?
So you heard the annual report from KPMG. Candidly speaking, we had some challenges. It was, there were some growing pains in working with a new auditor, new approaches, et cetera. There were also some regulatory changes that were taking effect. Stacy and I've had several conversations, and we're in agreement that we're good to recommend to the board KPMG for next year. But we are going to be monitoring and following up with them on certain things to see how things can improve for next year. And Stephen, your comment about price was duly noted, as it was by us. Because just for clarity, this was the first time that we'd ever been asked to prepare our own financial statements. And for that pleasure, we are paying significantly more than we paid Glenn historically. So, and it is not a small piece of work to prepare your own financial statements, particularly if you've never been tasked to do them before. So we are curious to have our postmortem meeting with them to review all of what went right, what went wrong, and what can be improved upon, and see how it goes next year. So for clarity, yes, we're comfortable recommending them moving forward, but we'll be reporting back to you if there's any concerns.
Okay, so the motion is resolved that the Board of Directors appoint the firm KPMG as the authority's auditor for the year 2024. Do I have someone to move that? Okay, moved by Dina, seconded by Roy. Okay, any comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Next item is but housekeeping as well. It's removing of operational redundant items from the MVCA's employee manual. Sally, is there, talk to that, please.
So you'll recall last year, we were brought forward a report that basically pointed out that a lot of what had been introduced into the admin bylaw over time was very procedural, form-like things that are very much operational in nature. So at that time, we were seeking the board's permission to enter into a process where over time we would disentangle, was the word we were using, operational matters from truly board policy type matters that should be in an admin bylaw and the like. And then that was for the admin bylaw, but then there are other policy documents of the board that also fell into that. And one of them was the employee manual. The employee manual is a board-approved policy document, but it too was full of a lot of administrative type forms, procedures, and things that are subject to an improvement over time. So what you have here before is the first list of things that we went through and said, these are clearly procedures and forms and the like that need to be removed. They do not belong in the employee manual. And they are, in fact, in several cases, redundant with our health and safety manual, which is a much more current and document that we defer to. So we attached, so you can actually see visually, these are very much forms and the like that we're asking you to remove from the employee manual.
Okay. So can I do these jointly, the two? Because the next one's the employee manual amendments. Yes.
I think for the rest of the board, they should know that this item and the next item were reviewed at the Finance and Administration Committee. It's not noted because you normally note that in the agenda. So that should have been like, so these were reviewed and approved by the Finance and Administration Committee.
Okay. So the motion is resolved that the Board of Directors approve the removal of various redundant or conflicting policies and operational elements from the employee manual as set out in report 3407/24, and that the Board of the Directors approve amendment of the employee manual as set out in report 3406 as amended by the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee. Could I have someone move that motion, please? Janet, seconded. Roy? Okay, any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. The next item is the 2023 annual report, which is on page 18. And are you speaking to that, Sally?
I can, I see it up on the screen there. I can just say that I don't think I'm going to walk through it. You have it, all of you in front of you. That 2023, I think, was a really good year for the organization. You know, we've had our challenging times since 2019 with all the regulatory changes, and in fact, they continue this year. The latest one, just for the record, came in Friday, that I haven't even really had a chance to digest, but it effectively is on the heels of 4124, which changed our regulations and our approval processes and scope. It basically, the one that came in Friday, gives the minister the powers to do everything that the other regulations said he could do. So I don't know the nuances of it, but it says, you know, you can appeal to the minister. The one that came in Friday says the minister can, that sort of thing. So I don't think it makes a material change, but please wait on that till the next board meeting when I actually have a more definitive answer on that. But all that to say, it's been several years of change. I feel that, the organization in 2023 is becoming a much more stable organization. We've got a lot of things under our belt. We've addressed those changes really well, and we have a really good team, a very enthusiastic group of people. We've been able to really improve I think the morale of the organization, and we're in a much better position to sort of take on these things as they come to us, and adapt to these kind of provincial changes and in the milieu, the context that we're operating in a better way. There's lots of exciting things happening in the coming year in terms of further meeting these regulatory changes. And I'm speaking specifically of the land conservation plan and the asset management plans and the like. But these are things that we had been working on in 2023 and prior years, and that we're going to see come to fruition this year. So I just want to leave you with the thought that I think MVCA is doing well. We had a good year, and I think this is going to be another good year. So happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Sally on the annual report? Again, I would echo what Sally is saying, that I think the times of transition and change, they've weathered the storm, and with their vision and planning, they're in a much better position going forward to the future. So a lot of effort done by a lot of people on this committee as the board, guiding it through that, past chairs and vice chairs, and a lot of work by staff to get where we are today. Pretty comfortable with it. Okay. We're going to have a motion for adjournment here, and then shortly followed by the Mississippi. Oh, we have a question.
just a very minor one, Sally, and it's more because of what we're thinking about doing in the township at the moment. Tree planting and tree giveaways. Who runs that in MVCA?
So it depends on
And the
size.
second part,
Oh,
and the second part of the question is, what level of follow-up do you do to see how successful any of the plantings have been?
so I'll answer the first part of that and then I'll turn it over to Matt. So who does it and coordinates it is a function of size and location. So we typically do the shoreline works and small plantings. But for large scale rural plantings, it's RBCA who coordinates it. So I'll turn it over to Matt then to speak on the follow-up that's done of plantings. Did you hear that, Andrew? Because I don't know. Was your
Sorry,
mic
no,
on?
didn't realize that Matt was speaking.
Yeah, so basically the resources aren't there to do broad scale follow-up, but we do follow up with lake associations annually and are engaging with them. So maybe this is something we can follow up with you directly offline, Andrew, and give you more details and see where there's an opportunity to assist.
Thanks, would be appreciated.
I know, Andrew, from doing plantings on my own place with RVCA a number of years ago, they did do follow-up where they came out and checked on occasion just to make sure, because I had to sign that I wouldn't basically make it a Christmas tree farm or whatever. So they do check it out. Okay.
Thanks.
So be it resolved that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned. Do I have someone to motion that? Jeff has motion, seconded by Taylor. All those in favor? Okay. And we will go straight into the source water protection meeting. Okay. And yeah, no, Marika will be leading us through this, but to start, we have quorum. So be it resolved that the agenda for the April 8th, 2024 source water protection meeting be adopted as presented. If I could have someone move that. Okay, move by Mary Lou, seconded by Dina. All in favor, carried. Okay. And Marika's going to take over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone, members of the board and staff. I'm pleased to be here. I'm joining you from home today. So we will turn our attention to agenda item number 3, which I'll be giving a bit of a staff update. Please let me know if you have any questions following this. But before we get into the staff reports, I want to highlight a few important things. First being that we've commenced a consultation on our Section 36 update, where we're updating our assessment reports and source protection plan. Therefore, the source protection authorities can expect a draft coming to you in the coming months, possibly by the July board meeting. The plan is to start public consultation in fall 2024. We do need board direction prior to starting the next phase of consultation. On April the 18th of this month, we're co-hosting our 5th WaterWise webinar with neighboring conservation authorities. So far, our webinars have reached an audience of more than 500 rural residents. You may have seen these webinars promoted on social media and shared amongst your networks. This next Thursday at 6 p.m., Dr. Anna Majuri, who works for Public Health Ontario, will be joining us to provide information on how water quality influences human health, how to avoid contaminated drinking water and the impacts of consuming contaminated drinking water. That concludes my staff update. Are there any questions on those two items?
Okay,
Okay.
seeing none. Okay.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank
Chair,
you,
I'll
Erica.
move on to agenda item number 4.
I remissed in a couple of things here, so maybe I better take care of it. And that's the actual approval of we did the adoption agenda. I did not do the approval of the minutes.
Thank
So
you.
the minutes were provided from December 11th. Could I have someone move that the minutes be accepted? They aren't in there? Oh, in that case, we will leave that to our next meeting. Okay. All right, Marika, item number 4, you have some committee member appointments.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff report is found on page 115 of your board agenda package. In accordance with the regulation, committee members may be only appointed for a maximum of 5 years. 5 of the 12 appointments expired in 2023, with the remaining 7 seats expiring this year. Of the 7 seats that are due for renewal, 5 members are seeking reappointment. 1 member has already been appointed and was appointed in 2023, and the final member is not seeking reappointment. He is stepping down from public engagement. Recruitment for the member who is not seeking appointment will commence later in 2024. Once the proposed members are reappointed by both source protection authorities, source protection staff will prepare letters of appointment. The recommendation and the recommended appointments are included in your staff report. Pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Be resolved that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority reappoint the following individuals to the Mississippi River Source Protection Committee for a 5-year term. Michael Kearney to represent the City of Ottawa Municipal Sector, Scott Bryce to represent the Groundwater System Municipal Sector, Peter McLaren and Drew Lampman to represent the Economic Sector, and Eleanor Renaud to represent the Municipality with No Systems Municipal Sector. Do I have someone to move that, please? Moved by Jeff, seconded by, oh, got lots of them here. Okay, Taylor, all those in favor? Okay, it's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can turn everyone's attention to agenda item number 5, which is our annual progress report. It starts on page 118. The Clean Water Act requires annual progress reports be prepared and submitted to the province every year by May 1st. This is our 7th annual progress report since the Source Protection Plan came into effect on January 1st, 2015. This year's annual progress report focuses on progress made in the last calendar year, so 2023. This report was also brought to the Source Protection Committee on April the 4th for their endorsement and direction, and also for their consideration, review, and comments. The 2 documents that were required to submit to the province is the public-facing annual report, which is also attached in your agenda package. It will be posted on our website for public viewing and also shared with our municipal partners. In addition, the supplemental form, which is really just for the eyes of the province, and it'll be submitted to them before May 1st. In summary, the goal of this is to provide overall grading of progress within our region in reaching the Source Protection Plan objectives. After presenting this last week, the committee decided that overall progress for 2023 was progressing well. Any feedback from the Source Protection Committee meeting was considered and incorporated, and we are now seeking direction from the 2 source protection authorities to submit to the province. Thank you very much for your consideration. The recommendation is included in the staff report, and I'm happy to answer questions you may have.
Okay, any questions? Janet?
Yeah, so, I read through this and most of everything is on target or progressing well, but there were a few areas and I wonder if there is anything that is causing you concern in any source protection areas? If there's not, that's fine, but is there anything that you feel that needs attention by municipalities or by this board? You know, that's what I'm looking for. Thanks.
Thank you for your question. One of the outstanding items is risk management plans. And it's a little bit difficult to navigate because it does take time to build relationships with the individuals who need the risk management plans. So we have been pretty patient and accommodating to the outstanding risk management plan holders. So we're working cooperatively with them. Progress is pretty slow, but we do anticipate complete compliance by the end of this year. In addition to that, something that we do have to focus on is following up with existing risk management plan holders, so the people that we've worked with in the past, because last year we did compliance inspections where we realized that there's been turnover in terms of ownership, or perhaps even complete like closure of some of the businesses we have risk management plans with. So I think doing our due diligence by reaching out to those individuals, sending letters out, reminding them of their obligations is key. But otherwise, in terms of working with our municipalities, it's been going very well. We're definitely in a bit of a maintenance stage for this program. And we're just hoping to achieve 100% plan implementation by next year. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up and say that, you know, this board is your opportunity to get help or support if you find that your risk management plans aren't progressing the way you wish. So just keep that in mind when you report later, like 6 months from now, because I know you do a report later. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. Be resolved that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority receive the 2023 Source Protection Annual Progress Report, public facing and supplemental form, including the Source Protection Committee comments and grading. And further, that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority directs staff to submit the annual progress report, public and supplemental form, to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks as required by the Clean Water Act and regulations. I have someone who will move that? Okay, moved by Taylor, seconded by Glenn. Any comments, further questions? Okay, all in favor? Carried. So Marika, your source protection annual progress report.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Chair.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a few minutes to
Risk
present.
management.
Excellent.
Get your risk management. We'll be there.
Thank you. So if I can turn everyone's attention to page 157 of the agenda package, we're going to take a few minutes to present the risk management official reports for 2023. Has been a bit of a quiet year. However, the Clean Water Act does require risk management officials to submit annually on the actions taken by risk management staff. It is pretty prescriptive of what we have to report on. You will see those two attached reports. The first report addresses threats in the Mississippi watershed outside of the City of Ottawa, because the City of Ottawa has retained their own risk management official. Therefore, they haven't delegated this authority to us as the conservation authorities, whereas the other 12 municipalities who have Part 4 obligations have delegated this authority to us. And so the second report addresses the threats within the City of Ottawa, which we received before the February 1st deadline. So we don't have any risk management plans or risk management activity to be reported on in 2023. And it's okay that this happens because we are in a bit of a maintenance phase, which I previously mentioned. So we just deal with risk management plans that are new. So that may be, you know, an outcome of a Planning Act application or a building code application. And things are pretty quiet in our wellhead protection areas and intake protection zones because the areas where something would be a threat are quite small and generally built up. So we're just dealing with them as they come, and perhaps there may be some to report on in 2024, but that concludes my staff report, and I'm pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay. So be resolved that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority receive for information the risk management official annual report for the 2023 calendar year. Could I have someone move that, please? Okay, moved by Jeff, seconded by Roy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and before we adjourn the our Source Protection Authority meeting, I just want to comment that I did sit in on a meeting last week for my truck, so I was sort of like a fly on the wall, but it was very enlightening as to what actually is being done there. And one of the interesting things that was brought forward that just to mention to your council is that apparently the province is looking at having a fee for service installed for people wanting to do water sampling. And they're also looking at closing a number of labs because if they feel it goes fee for service, then it'll just privatize it, which for those of us who are in the rural area could be fairly significant in terms of protecting it. And it was nice to see that the Source Water Protection Agency, our Source Water people are actually going to send a letter to the various ministers and stuff. And we'll see if we can get it in front of the counties and stuff for Eastern Ontario to make sure they make it known to the minister and perhaps to the premier that this really isn't a great idea. Anyways, so be it resolved that the Source Protection Authority meeting be adjourned. Moved by Taylor, seconded by Mary Lou. All in favor? Carried. Now, Sally has informed me that Roberta may have a closing ceremony procedure for us.
Also, traveling back to this home here, traveling safely to your heart, your soul, and your spirit. I know I sound hokey. So hopefully here's the traveling song. Wait a minute. Since we're talking about water, I think it would be smart to be singing the Algonquin water song first. So I'll do that. And I didn't bring my water stick, so I'll do it this way. And yes, I'll leave a gap between the stanzas, as we call them. Ni bi wabo andayan aki misque ni bi wabo hey ya hey ya hey ya hey hey ya hey ya hey ya oh. Ni mi wabo andayan aki misque ni bi wabo hey ya hey ya hey ya hey hey ya hey ya hey ya oh. Ni bi wabo andayan aki misque ni bi wabo hey ya hey ya hey ya hey hey ya hey ya hey ya oh. Ni bi wabo andayan aki misque ni bi wabo hey ya hey ya hey ya hey hey ya hey ya hey ya oh. And if you end up with an earwig at 3 in the morning, you can call me and yell at me. So this is a traveling song. Hey, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hi. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hi. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hi, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, oh. Way, hey, ah, hey, ah, hi, oh.
I don't know if it's, yeah, is it appropriate to clap? It was very nice. Thank you again for Roberta and Ross coming in and sharing some of your culture with us today. I think the board was very appreciative of your efforts. Thank you.
And there is food and drink awaiting us after the meeting here. So hopefully it's all set up. We'll see when we get out there.